Hello everyone, welcome to today's video. In today's video, we'll be looking at how strong is 6, your little nightmare. Much like Mono, 6 does not have much information disclosed. Because of such, it is only speculation on 6's origin and story. However, we do know about 6's journey throughout the story of Little Nightmares specifically. In many Little Nightmares, 6 and Raincoat Girl are both captured inside the Pretender's house. 6 helps the Pretender on occasion to try and get themselves free throughout the journey, and even proceeds to drop a boulder on the Pretender as an act of defiance. At the end of the game where the Raincoat Girl dies, 6 then would leave the mansion and go towards the city that is in Little Nightmares 2. When 6 tries to go to the city in Little Nightmares 2, gets captured by the Hunter and is left in there until freed by Mono later on. After this, 6 was able to find the coat of Raincoat Girl drifted away into the city in Little Nightmares 2. 6 puts on the raincoat in memory of the Raincoat Girl and continues the journey. 6 would get kidnapped in Little Nightmares 2 multiple times, once by the Thin Man, and he would eventually become a monster inside the signal tower. Mono would save 6 from being a monster, and they both would try and escape the signal tower, just for 6 to betray Mono. After the events of Little Nightmares 2, 6 starts getting a hunger. This hunger is personified through Dark 6 at the end of Little Nightmares 2, and it's the hunger 6 has throughout the original Little Nightmares game. This hunger causes 6 to act aggressively towards the people around them. It starts off innocently eating bread, and then deciding to devour a gnome, and then later on, devour the lady. After this, 6 would grow into a much more deadlier being, and would walk outside the mall. On the way out, killing every single passenger of the mall, finally free. I said this last time and I'll say it again. If you want to get into more Little Nightmare content, I recommend looking at the Little Nightmare comics, or alternatively, I'd recommend looking at the YouTuber Super Horror Bro. I mentioned him last time. I think his videos of Little Nightmare are very, very good, so go watch those videos if you'd like to learn more of the Little Nightmare lore. As mentioned in the previous video, the scale of the Little Nightmare world is a bit bigger than what most people think. Once again, using the scaling of 6 at the start of Little Nightmares compared to this door, when 6 is moving the chair, we can say that 6 is about 1 foot 8 inches, which is 2.2 times bigger than the average what people normally suspect online. Using the information of 6's height, we can look at the first game involving 6, Many Little Nightmares, and we can calculate the force needed to move this boulder, which 6 does. Comparing 6's height to the boulder, we see the boulder has a diameter of around 1.55 meters, and using that and its likely density of something like claystone, we could say it has a mass nearly of 5,000 kilograms. Now of course 6 pushed this and lift it up. Now pushing rock on a soil or concrete like substance would have a coefficient of friction of 0.3, meaning the actual force 6 has done is around 14,000 newtons, or about 1. Using this evaluation of the height of Little Nightmare characters compared to what people actually think they are, we'd say that the average thing in the world is about 2.2 times bigger than what we'd expect for a linear scale factor, which means in terms of mass they would be 2.2 cubed, which means that a medical load stretcher in the morgue would be able to accommodate 190 kilos for normal people in real life, but in Little Nightmares it's more around 2 tons. 6 and Mono are both shown able to move these morgue stretchers in the game. Another feat of physical strength that both Six and Mono do share is that when Mono was in the butchers and he broke off a metal bar, Six also broke off a metal bar from the other side, as there was 2 metal bars. Now, I previously talked about the force needed to break these metal bars in the previous video. I'll do so again. To break a millimeter of welding takes 2,000 newtons of force. This was about an inch thick, meaning that the force used here was around 50,000 newtons, or about 5 tons. Considering Six's small stature, most people will be quite surprised by Six's incredible strength. In fact, some people may even call it inconsistent. However, in the first game we see Six, where Six is so hungry that she straight up passes out from being hungry, she has several feats of strength in that game as well. These include breaking off a 2x4 using just her bare hands at the very start of the game, to knocking over a grandfather clock and the door it was supporting, and doing so hard that grandfather clock broke. We then have Six lifting up a metal door using a clank, and then we have, against the janitor, Six was able to pull off part of the metal cage. This part of the cage is similar to what Mono and Six did against the butcher, which means it supports the whole 5-ton feat, and this is the Six when she's hungry. So it is very consistent for her to be in that range of power. I should also mention how, with Six's later abilities, or when Six is in the transformed monster state, it's obvious that Six's physical abilities will be far greater than what they were in this game. Much like Mono, Six is not known for her physical speed. We can see in this scene when running away from the janitor that in about 0.2 seconds she can run only about 0.2 meters, which basically means that when calculating her speed, she moved around 1.1 meters per second. Moving around 1.1 meters per second is slower than what Mono was doing. However, this is Six while hungry, and in fact in Little Nightmares 2 they do in fact move relative in speed to one another, meaning that she most likely is around the speed of Mono at 1.48 meters per second. Now, dealing with Six's raw power, we need to actually scale the size of the Maw. Using Six's height of 0.6 meters, we can scale first the height of the boat that delivers the passengers to the Maw. This boat would be 21 meters high. Using that, we can then scale the pipe on top of the Maw to be about 14.6 meters across. We then can split the Maw into its width, top half and bottom half, the width being 509 meters, the bottom half being 766 meters, and the top half of the Maw being 246 meters. Using all of this, we can get the volume of the Maw, and the volume of the Maw ends up being 112 million cubic meters. Now that we have the volume of the Maw, we can actually start finding out how heavy it is. First, we have to account for the fact the Maw is hollow, and using some approximations to some buildings, I think the best approximation say it's about 10% full of actual metal, and using stainless steel and this 10% volume, we'd get a mass of 84 billion kilograms, or in other words, 84 million tons. Now, the speed of the Maw is unknown. We don't know how fast it moves. We do know it moves, its engine's constantly running, but we don't know how fast it's actually moving. What we do know is if the Maw was going to move, it has to move faster than the waves around it, otherwise the waves could force the Maw to go somewhere it doesn't want to. Now, waves have a range of speed between 5 miles an hour to 35 miles an hour while in deep ocean. The Maw should be capable of the upper end of these, otherwise once again it would get dragged away by faster waves, but we'll do both bounds anyway. For the lower bound, we have a kinetic energy of 211 billion joules, which is enough to destroy a city block, while the high end would be more along 10 trillion joules, or enough to destroy a small town. I do believe the higher end is the better bound once again because of the fact that we don't want them all to get dragged away by slightly faster wave currents. Now, you might be wondering, how does 6 scale to this level of power? At the end of the game, as Freddy mentioned, 6 consumed the lady and received the lady's power. It's stated in the extra file of the game that the lady has the power of the Maw, the only place that is immune to the outside world. So while this does mean that the engine is powered by the lady herself, it also means the Maw sadly doesn't scale to any stronger characters like the Signal Tower or Mono. Now let's look at 6's powers and abilities. The most notable ability 6 has would be the Soul Consuming, which she uses at the end of Little Nightmares 1. However, she should have the other abilities of the lady as well. These other abilities include some either telekinesis or technopathy to move the Maw itself. It should also include a form of mind manipulation coming from the hypnotic spell that the lady has over the Maw and all its inhabitants. Not quite at the same level as Signal Tower, but still very impressive. The lady is also shown powering the lights that can once again petrify characters and turn them to stone. And we know that the lady is able to transmute the runaway kid into a No, essentially a form of transmutation and powerful nullification, so she'd have all of these abilities. Another ability that 6 would have was that when consuming people, she should gain their strength, and in doing so, her physical strength would most likely be even greater than when she was a monster in Little Nightmares 2. At the very least, it's far greater than the 5 tons bare minimum she had before gaining any of her abilities. When it comes to 6's resistances, 6 would resist all of her own abilities, obviously. However, she also has shown resistance to the Signal Tower's abilities both inside the tower and outside. It's known that the Signal Tower is able to corrupt those just by looking at it in such a way that they get disformed. And while 6 may show signs of corruption throughout Little Nightmares 2, overall, there's not that much effect, which is still incredibly impressive considering the Signal Tower can mind hacks people all the way around the world. We also know that the Signal Tower biologically consumes those that go inside, and yet 6 was able to run around in her base form back out of the Signal Tower. These abilities would probably increase after she got her power from the lady. In the thumbnail of this video, I said that 6 was a Little Nightmare. I meant that quite literally, because in most of Little Nightmares, the theme is that the characters are childlike, they're tiny, and everything around them is so much bigger. And while that is true, most things in Little Nightmares is bigger than 6, the fact of the matter is that 6 herself is a Little Nightmare. Just go back and think about some of the things 6 has done. When confronted with a pretender who, on touch, could completely devour your body, 6 dropped a boulder on them. When confronted with the Signal Tower and given the opportunity to escape, 6 left Mono behind to make sure she could save herself. When trapped inside the Maw, she killed the most powerful being in the Maw and then decided to kill everyone else inside the Maw as well, draining their life essence for herself. 6 quite literally has the survivability to survive almost anything in Little Nightmares and has continued to show this. Unlike Mono, 6 doesn't have a weakness of morality, doesn't hold back. This is shown with the aggression towards the bullies, breaking them with her bare hands. And when it comes to how she uses her abilities, there isn't any reason for restraining. She's not like Mono, who will keep them until needed, she'll use them whenever. This is why 6 is a Little Nightmare. If I haven't convinced you that 6 should be considered a Little Nightmare in Little Nightmares, think of it this way. 6 is the only character who has seen every final antagonist of every single game, and has met every other protagonist of every other game, all of which, by the end of Little Nightmares, is deceased. 6 is the only one still around. Now let's summarize everything 6 has so far. In terms of strength, even while hungry, 6 can easily produce around 5 tons of force, and with more souls would be way stronger. While hungry, 6 is able to move at 1.16 meters per second, and normally keeps up with Mono at 1.48 meters per second. In terms of raw power, should scale to the Lady on the Moor at 10 trillion joules or small town level. In terms of powers and abilities, 6 has soul absorption, either technopathy or telekinesis, mind manipulation, transmutation, petrification, power draining, as well as, like Mono, the strategic knowledge to overcome a difference in physical abilities. In terms of resistances, 6 obviously resists all of her own abilities, as well as having extra mind manipulation resistance, as well as biological absorption resistance. Thank you everyone for watching. I hope you all enjoyed this video, going over 6 from Little Nightmares. Go watch my previous video where I went over Mono from Little Nightmares 2. Mono is quite a bit more powerful than 6, but has some weaknesses 6 does not, so it might be a very interesting video, probably stronger than you think. The next video will be going over how strong Little Misfortune is from the game Little Misfortune, and that character will also most likely surprise you. There's a poll at the end of this video. I just want to ask, which video did you prefer, the How Strong is Mono video or the How Strong is 6 video? Please check out my friends Korin and Captain Forest. And with that, see you all next time.